Welcome to Spinning Back Clique, each week here at MMA Junkie. We take a spin through the biggest headlines in the sport. This week, we welcome in gorgeous George Garcia, Mike Bond, and Danny Segura. So let's just get it going. Guys, at UFC 268, Kamaru Usman defended the UFC welterweight title for the fifth time, and UFC President Dana White said he believes the Nigerian Nightmare has supplanted George St. Pierre as the greatest welterweight of all time. Is he right? If not, what is Usman lacking to earn that recognition as the GOAT? Let's put 4 minutes on the clock. George, get it started.
Well, 5 title defenses is super impressive. He's definitely getting there. We should have this conversation, but GSP has almost double that. He's at 9. And that to me is one of the big criteria, some of the most important criteria. The records are pretty similar. Usman's got one less loss overall. They got similar wins. They're in their 20s, low 20s. But and guess what, guys? I'm not even going to bring up, GSP also became a middleweight champion, because that doesn't matter. This is a discussion to who's the greatest welterweight champion. Not if this was the greatest fighter ever, Usman will be involved in those discussions at some point as well. And that's where the GS people can play that card, but not right now. This is the greatest welterweight championship discussion. And so right now, those title defenses, I don't need them to get to 9, guys. If you can get to 7 and maybe take out Luque or Edwards again, Thompson if he were to come back, Chimaev. There's very similarities to what GSP did in his career, and Chimaev is almost like Usman's Johnny Hendricks. Johnny Hendricks worked his way up, and he was one of I think he may have even been GSP's last title defense was Johnny Hendricks. So that might be Chimaev in a couple years when he eventually gets there, if he eventually gets there. And Leon Edwards is very similar to Josh Koscheck, somebody who he beat. Not in a title effort, but then later on in a title effort. So 2 times. I'd like to see him do that to Edwards if Edwards can get past the Masvidal. So many things have to happen, but I guess the short of it is I still need more title defenses from Kamaru Usman. And I want to say one last thing here too. I'm going to make the same argument for Kamaru Usman. If he surpasses GSP, when there's going to be some other hotshot coming through in a few years, I'm going to do the same thing and defend Kamaru Usman's stature as the greatest, the same way I'm defending GSP's. It's nothing personal. It's just that when these guys get to that point, you got to keep it real and you got to split these hairs in these all-time great talks.
Yeah, number of title defenses is a great benchmark, right? It shows that longevity. Mike, I imagine your Canadian citizenship is kind of on the line in how you answer this one, but is Usman the GOAT? And if not, how does he get there?
So in fairness, on the title defense front, obviously, George St. Pierre got the UFC belt much earlier in his run, so he had more chances for title defenses. It took Kamaru Usman, I believe, 9-0 in the UFC to get a title shot. So usually it doesn't take guys that long, and that much work to get that opportunity. But for Usman, it did. And that was a product of him having a really difficult time getting fights. So he is well on his way. I mean, there has been some flaws. Of course, George St. Pierre lost fights, but there was a stretch there as champion where I think he won 33 rounds in a row. He was beating guys at their own game. If you're a person that was touted to outstrike him, he would outstrike you. If you thought that he could be outgrappled, he would outgrapple you. Kamaru Usman lost 2 rounds to Colby Covington on Saturday. He got dropped by Gilbert Burns in their fight in February. So, there's been some moments of flaw for him. So, I think he is on the right track. Absolutely. He is probably, when it's all said and done, going to be the front runner on this discussion, but he's not quite there yet. And there's nothing wrong with that. It just takes time and it takes effort, but I'm not sitting here saying it's not going to happen. It's probably going to happen, just not quite yet.
All right. Not a lot of time left, but Danny, do you want to add in on that? We're going to make this unanimous. I thought there might be some arguments that Usman is the GOAT.
No, GSP is the GOAT, man. And look, I'll say this in defense of Usman, he's not done yet. GSP already had an entire career where he was able to prove that he's the GOAT, right? It's like if a teacher gives you an assignment and, they gives one person 30 minutes and the other person 2 hours. Let's wait and see. That's why it was so easy to argue, okay, who's the GOAT, the welterweight GOAT between GSP and Matt Hughes, right? Both guys were done. But at this case, Usman's still doing work. He's not quite there yet, but like I said, he's not done yet fighting. So maybe down the line, he'll surpass this.
Yeah, great points. He's at least knocking on the door, that's for sure. So we'll see what he does moving forward. But guys, also at UFC 268, Rose Namajunas scored the first defense of her second UFC title reign with a hard-fought decision win over former title holder Zhang Weili. Now, Namajunas says she thinks Carla Esparza is probably the next logical challenge for her, but Dana White wasn't committed to booking that fight just yet and said, hey, it's an option. So let's put ourselves in the matchmaker's room and book the next fight for Rose. Is there another fight that makes more sense, or is Carla Esparza the way to go? What's the UFC going to do here, you think? Let's put 4 minutes on the clock. Mike, you get it started.
It's got to be Carla. I mean, what are we doing here if it's not? I understand that the UFC is trending more and more in the direction of doing the most bankable fight or the most high-profile fight, quote unquote. But come on, like Carla Esparza has done the work, and the storyline is there. It's not like this is something that you have a difficult time selling. She has a win over Rose Namajunas in the inaugural UFC strawweight title fight back in 2014, I believe. And this is like the easiest storyline you could ever possibly sell. This is something that falls right into your lap. I get it. It's not a fight that's going to headline a pay-per-view. That's why they should have done it this past Saturday. You had Madison Square Garden. You had a stacked card. You had a main event that everyone was going to pay for and see. And then you could have just done the Rose and Esparza fight there, and it would have been fine. That wouldn't have been the one everyone would have been asked to pay all their money for. It would have been just the perfect storm. Now they're putting themselves in this weird spot where maybe the stars don't align quite as easily, and it becomes a little more problematic booking this fight. I get it, but come on, Carla Esparza's done the work. She has the win over Rose. If you want to say it should be Marina Rodriguez, hey, look, Carla Esparza has a win over her too. It may have been a split decision, but she got her hand raised in that fight. So to me, this just makes all the sense in the world. I get it. Maybe not the most friendly style, but the storyline is there. Unless the UFC is legitimately fearful that Rose is going to lose to Carla, and that's why they don't want to do this fight. But come on, this is the game we play. You got to do the style matchup. You got to have these fights. And to me, it's got to be Carla. No one else should be right there right now.
Yeah, I mean, Esparza definitely has the body of work. And as you said, the storyline to me seems easy to sell, even if you know Carla's not going to talk about it a whole lot. But Danny, we know the UFC is trying to sell pay-per-views, right? They're trying to move the needle. So are there other matchups that might be a little more enticing for them to book?
There are. And before I mention a little theory that I have as far as the option that Dana White said at the post-fight presser, I do got to agree with Mike 100%. Is like, I know we're in the money era. I know we're trying to make the biggest fight possible, but at some point we do got to cater to merit. We do got to cater to sport. I mean, 5-fight win streak right now, has a win over Rose, former champion. I mean, she defeated the top contenders, Jan Jones and Marina Rodriguez in her last 2 bouts. What are we doing here? What are we doing here? If you don't give her the next title shot, it's just going to be a black guy. As far as what could potentially be next, look, we saw Jessica Andrade pick up a nice win in her last bout. She said she wanted to drop back to 115. They are one apiece, having her defeat Rose Namajunas via slam KO the first time. Then the second fight was a fight of the night. She is a former champion, a bit of a sexier, I guess, a bigger name than Carla Esparza. So I think that's the option that Dana White is talking about. Again, I don't agree with it. I think Carla Esparza should absolutely be next. She's done the work. She deserves the next title shot, but I wouldn't be surprised if the UFC decides to do a trilogy bout and put a nice package of, hey, look, there's unfinished business here with the Brazilian.
Interesting theory. Look, I mean, Dana was laying it out weeks back. I wouldn't sit around if you were Carla. I'd stay busy if I were you, right? So that's what makes this question so interesting. I think we all think Esparza should be there, but it seems like she might not. George, you have any idea what you think is coming up next?
Let me tell you something. They always talk about this Tuesday afternoon matchmaker meeting. I'll tell you what, if they don't come up with Esparza versus Namajunas in 2022 at that actual Tuesday meeting, whenever they decide who Rose is fighting, if it's not Esparza, they might as well name it the Muppet Show, because what are we doing here? The guys laid it out perfectly. I don't need to repeat that, why Esparza qualifies. She head and shoulders qualifies over everyone else. She's getting the results. She's getting it done. Former champ, has the win over Rose, everything. But you did say option. I guess there is one option, and here's the one I think might actually work, because Tatiana Suarez has been hurt. And so she's been working out at the PI a lot. And I'm just wondering if Dana's come across her and then just thought, hey, you might be interested in going back to strawweight instead of, flyweight. She's recovering from a knee injury. But if she is undefeated, high-level wrestler, maybe that's the option right there, fellas. That's all I can think of.
Man, we'll have to see how this one plays out. I think what I'm going to say is that the spinning Back Clique crew here is going to channel our inner Justin Gaethje and just say Carla Esparza or we riot. That's what I'm thinking.
Yep.
Okay. Guys, this past weekend also saw Patrick Freire claim the Bellator lightweight belt that was vacated by his brother, Patricio Freire. Now, the two Brazilians have been long-time stalwarts on that Bellator roster, but I'll ask you this. Are the Pitbull brothers the best sibling duo to ever compete in MMA? Let's put 4 minutes on the clock. Danny, kick us off.
I mean, they're certainly up there, right? I mean, two champions, one of them with Patricio champion in Patricio champion at lightweight and featherweight, right? Putting on exciting performances, beating solid opposition. But I think the best, in my opinion, are the Pettis brothers. Because again, two champions. Sergio, obviously champion at 135 pounds in Bellator, longtime contender in the UFC at flyweight. And then obviously Anthony Pettis, champion in WC, champion in the UFC at lightweight. And, we don't need to go over his resume. He's beaten so many respectable names, some of the best in the sport. So I think the Pettis brothers take this one just because I think they're just a little bit more skilled, a little bit more accomplished. But hey, Anthony Pettis kind of towards the end of his career, right? Sergio seems to be at a good moment right now. But the Pitbull brothers, I mean, Patricio just got the title right now. And, Patricio seems to be wanting to mount a comeback and regain. So maybe they make up for it and they surpass the Pettis brothers. But for me, right now, the best sibling duo has to be the Pettis brothers.
Yeah, hard to argue against what that family has accomplished as well. George, what do you think? Is it the Pitbull brothers or do you see another duo out there?
I see another duo out there, and I know I'm going to get yellow carded for this one, but I just got to go for it, guys. Listen, there's a lot of duo brothers that are headed by like one brother that was a monster, and the other one was respectable. We don't want to disrespect the other parties, but like the Emelianenkos, Nogueiras, Overeems come to mind. But I'm gonna go with an odd pick here. Adopted brothers, the Shamrocks. If you think about it, between the King of Pancrase runs that they had, the Super Fight Championship that Ken Shamrock won early on, and then the two belts that Frank Shamrock had. He had the UFC middleweight belt that became the light heavyweight belt, and he also had the Strikeforce middleweight belt. That's pretty impressive collection of belts. Plus, me, I just got to go there, man. I got to give some love to the Lee siblings over in Hawaii. Christian Lee, Angela Lee, both have title wins over at one championship with title defenses as well. So they're not done. They're young. Keep an eye on them. Ask me this question in about 3 years.
I like it. Using the wild card there with the Shamrocks and the adopted brothers and paying a little homage to the Pioneers. I can respect that. And as well, shout out to the crew over there in one championship. They really are accomplishing some things as well. Mike, we'll turn it over to you then as well. What do you think? Is it the Pitbull brothers or do you see another duo out there that's the greatest of all time in MMA?
Pitbull brothers are good. Obviously, the Pettis brothers are great. We're talking about fighters who have won championships at the highest level in the biggest organizations. But come on, when you think of a brother sibling in mixed martial arts, who do you think of? You think of this guy and this guy, the Diaz brothers, the 209. They're the ones. I know this maybe doesn't look the most like him. These are a gift I got from some friends. But come on, these are the ones, two of the biggest stars in mixed martial arts history, being part of the biggest fights in the history of our sport. Of course, Nick Diaz won a championship in Strikeforce. Nate Diaz, of course, won the Ultimate Fighter. I know it was a little bit of an odd ending there with his season. But these are the guys who are two of the most popular brother siblings in our sport, and they have done it all. They've headlined some of the biggest fights, and they have the biggest fan base really out there of any brother duo. So they are the obvious choice to me when I think of brothers in MMA. I think of those two. Maybe you can argue over accomplishments, quality of wins, these type of things, quality of losses as well. But when you think of brothers in MMA, it is Nick Diaz, it is Nate Diaz.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering if somebody was going to take that one, right? It was just sitting there right on the tee. I mean, certainly when you look in terms of popularity, you look in terms of star power, and over an incredibly lengthy period of time, the Diaz brothers, I mean, they've got to be the two biggest stars in terms of sibling duos in the history of the sport, but maybe lacking some of the accomplishments of some of that other arguments. I feel like we should have had Eric Albertine on here to give him a segment. I think I know what his argument would have been, and let him weigh in on who the greatest was. Well, guys, this weekend you can prove just how much of an MMA junkie you are with Bellator 271 on Friday and UFC Fight Night 197 on Saturday. Back-to-back big nights of action. Max Holloway versus Yair Rodriguez is a stellar main event, and Chris Cyborg is one of the greatest to ever do it. She's in action against Sinead Kavanaugh at Bellator. But outside of those headliners, I want to ask, what fight do you think should be appointment viewing for those fans that can't be junkies like us and watch all day, every day? What's the biggest fight to watch outside of those headliners? George, we'll put 4 minutes on the clock. You get it started.
Well, John, I was going to talk about Yadong, but I'm not going to go that route. I mean, that's going to be a good fight versus Julio Arce, but I like J-Train, Justin Gonzalez, 12-0 over at Bellator versus Aaron Pico. I think this is going to be a fun fight to watch. Of course, I hope it remains standing, but if it hits the ground, trust me, these guys can get at it. They're good all-around athletes, and they're in one of the few divisions at Bellator. Maybe not few is the right word, but Bellator's got a couple divisions that really, really pop. Featherweight pops for them, right? It's deep with talent, and so there's tons of possibilities that can of what can happen there. At some point, Frady is going to have to get another shot at his title because he was a multiple time running champion at Bellator in that division. Of course, he was a champ. McKee is just a huge star for them, and that's why they went 16 deep over there at that Grand Prix. But I really feel like whoever wins this fight is going to be in a prime position, maybe one fight away from getting a title shot. So I think the stakes are going to be high, but I really think both guys are just very, very talented. So aside from Cyborgs' title defense fight, keep an eye on this one over at Bellator.
Yeah, that's a great shot right there. Very, very meaningful fight. And it looks like it will probably just be action-packed as well on paper. Mike, what about you? What's one fight you think should not be missed?
It's got to be Cynthia Calvillo and Andrea Lee, on the undercard of the UFC Fight Night event. I know maybe people don't think of that one as like jumping off the page, but to me, it's one that has among the highest stakes if we're looking at the fights across these cards. I mean, we desperately need competition and challengers for Valentina Shevchenko, and neither of these women have fought her yet. So, Cynthia Calvillo has been on the doorstep before. Of course, she lost the last two against Caitlin Chukagian and Jessica Andrade. I think if she had won those fights, she probably would have been getting a title shot. She didn't do it. So she really needs this win here. And I think the winner of that fight kind of gets put at the forefront of the conversation at 125, where a division that's, barren on fresh contenders there. So do I think either of them is going to beat Valentina Shevchenko? No. Do I think they have, a slimmer of hope? Not really, but the woman needs fights. She needs people to come off wins. And this fight, is one that I kind of circle and looking at someone who's going to provide a future challenge in that division.
It's the most challenging part about that division, right? I mean, there's legitimate contenders that are all very talented and very capable, but when you line them up against Valentina Shevchenko, it's just like, who do you pick? But you're absolutely right. That one has some real stakes in the division. That's one to pay attention to if you're kind of thinking about who could be next, who's in the number one title position, that sort of thing, and moving the division forward. So, Danny, how about you? One that you got your eyes on this weekend outside of those main events?
Yeah, certainly. I'm gonna stay in the lightweight division right now. It's super, super red hot, and I want to highlight a bout between Thiago Moses and Spain Joel Alvarez. It's a fantastic bout between two of the best grapplers, really, and submission artists at 155 pounds. Joel Alvarez is currently in a 3-fight winning streak. He's 28 years old. He's got a lengthy record. He's 18-2. 16 of those 18 wins come via submission. I mean, the guy's just a complete stud, and he's been looking great in the last 3 fights. And Thiago Moses, yeah, he lost to Islam Makhachev, but a lot of people do, right? He's coming off a main event fight. I think this is not really your elite lightweight, but I think the winner here could maybe get a lot closer and be maybe one fight away from being talked a little bit more about, title contention and stuff like that. So I definitely have my eyes on that bout. It's going to be a grappler's delight. If you're into submissions, if you're into grapplers, this is the fight to watch. It's going to be an amazing bout. Another fight that I'd like to highlight on the Bellator side real quick is Valerie Loretta's return. She comes back against Taylor Turner. She's off the rankings, a little bit pressure off her now. She's coming off her first professional defeat. Obviously, it was a very rough one. A lot of fan hate throwing her away. So curious to see. She's so young too. Curious to see how she bounces back from all that this Friday.
Two very, very solid choices there. Oh, let's be honest, though. You only picked Joel Alvarez so you could say it multiple times and impress us all with your amazing accent, but it will be a good fight.
No
guys,
comment.
to close it out, let's have a little fun. Jon Jones is saying the garage isn't going to be enough for him training moving forward. He's going to take a look at some options as he prepares to move to heavyweight and make that debut in the UFC. Let's say Jon calls you up and says, where should I go train? What would you tell him? Let's give him some advice. 4 minutes on the clock. Mike, you get it started.
It's a tricky one because I just don't know precisely what he's looking for. Like if he's going to go to one of these big super camps along the lines of a Jackson Wink, is he going to uproot his whole life? Is he going to be moving to a different city, different location to, train there full time? Or is it just going to be stopping him with training camp? I know there's been the split with Michael Winklejohn, but I know he's still working with Greg Jackson, still working with Brandon Gibson. What role do they have to play in this? It's really, until we get more details, I don't know 100%, but coming off just the top of my head, I think a good fit for him, if he's just going to start anew, would be going to California and working with Jason Perillo. He's a guy that I have the utmost respect for as a coach. Of course, there's a lot of great ones in the game, but you look at what he's done with the likes of, Chito Vera, Mackenzie Dern, Michael Bisping, and many more. I think that would be a good camp for him. There's, some bigger guys like Luke Rockhold to train there that I think could be a good, sparring partner for him, a good grappling partner for him. So it's a difficult one because obviously, he's a 265 pound version of Jon Jones now. And I don't know what kind of sparring partners he's going to get in terms of guys that are his side, especially in the heavyweight division where he could now be fighting any of these guys. So it's very complicated. But I think Jason Perillo, in terms of like personality, he is a guy who is able to deal with a lot in terms of his fighters, both in and out of the cage. I think they would have a good rapport and get along well. I think that would be a good fit for Jon Jones.
Yeah, interesting point on just finding the training partners that are going to fit with him at this point, it being as big as he is. But a great shout there in terms of psychology and an excellent coach in Perillo. Danny, how about you? You got any advice for Jon Jones?
Yeah, I think he can reunite with his former roommate, Colby Covington, down at MMA Masters in Miami. I think that, I'm just kidding. No, but I think it'd be very interesting if he would come to South Florida. I think Sanford MMA would be a good option. Obviously, he has a good relationship and has always had a lot of respect for Anthony Johnson, who trains out of Sanford MMA, who's fought at heavyweight and is obviously carries a lot of heavyweight power. And, there's also Vincent Lascelles, who fights, this weekend in Bellator. He's fighting at heavyweight as well, although he's fought at light heavyweight. So there are some partners as well. Tyrone Spong, a very well-respected striker in the heavier weight classes. And obviously Henry Hoof, just a fantastic mind when it comes to the game. I think South Florida, Sanford MMA will suit him well. Also just a great facility in general. But there are a lot of options out there. But I think, South Florida, whether Anthony Johnson and Jon Jones sparring, I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, as you said, a lot of great partners there. Another great coach, known for having a great mind. I don't think the Covington reuniting would be very good, but yeah, I like that South Florida spot instead. George, how about you? Where would you like to see Jon Jones go?
Well, Mike made a great point. Is he going to uproot his family? How permanent of a decision is this going to be, or is it just going to be for fight camps? Because there's another gym in Albuquerque, Fit MMA. I just don't know how that would work with Jackson and Gibson because they have their own coaches there. But if he's going to stay local, then that's an easy one. That's a layup. But thinking outside the box, I'm not going to focus so much on trainers as training partners because I think you can bring a lot of them in. A lot of the top level fighters do that. So now I'm looking for coaches, and I can think of two. For one, Fight Ready with Eric Albarracin. Take that, Danny. How about that accent? And Henry Cejudo. I just think with Cejudo, he would connect, man. These guys are high-level guys that have accomplished a lot. And I think he would respect Henry and whatever game plan and mindset he puts in him, And so I think that would be a good choice. I think they've done some good stuff with Figueiredo and Zhang Weili, even though she came up a little bit short this past weekend. And I think another one, man, is James Krause. He works with a small team of like 10 or 12 athletes. But one thing I've heard of athletes that go to James Krause is when you commit to a training camp with James Krause, I mean, he really, really dials you in and makes you the best possible fighter. So if you make it through 6, 8, 10 weeks with James Krause, you had a great camp. You have a great chance to win.
Yeah, a lot of great options there, man. And I'm sure any of them would be happy to have Jon Jones there. Let me just throw out as a wild card. I'm going to give my hometown some love. How about Dallas and Fortis MMA, man? I'm kind of interested to see how he would react to the general, Saif Saud, kind of yelling at him and getting things going in that gym. I think that'd be a lot of fun. And I'll say this. Maybe it's back at Jackson Wink because that would mean that everything is going good and that he's, kind of gotten past all those hurdles and they've welcomed him back in. That would be a good thing to see. So we'll see how it all plays out for Jon Jones. Guys, in the meantime, it's another busy weekend. As we said, Bellator, UFC, LFA's in action. There'll be a ton of stuff going on. We'll talk about it all next week on Spinning Back Clique.